number one fear is public humiliation. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm not afraid of it.
Mel Gibson just exposed Oprah Winfrey, and it's sending shockwaves through Hollywood. As always, Tinsletown is once again wrapped up in layers and layers of drama, and this time we have none other than the legendary Mel Gibson. Mel is using his heavily criticized film Sound of Freedom to unveil the dirty secrets behind the shiny image of Hollywood. And there's one name he brought up that left us all shocked to our cores: Oprah Winfrey. Let's delve into all the drama. As we've established already, Hollywood is full of surprises, and Sound of Freedom was one of those unwelcome surprises too. This movie is starring Jim Caviezel, Mira Sorvino, and Bill Camp, and the goal of this project was to raise much-needed awareness about issues like child trafficking.
The fight to end child trafficking is a worldwide movement that requires collective effort and a united front. This is just the beginning. Go see Sound of Freedom.
Now, you'd expect that a film like this would get a lot of attention and be promoted worldwide. But once his film was released, Hollywood elites made so much effort to cover up the very important issue of child trafficking that was raised in the movie. The lack of media coverage, the silence from all the top names in Hollywood, and their efforts to shut it down because it was too sensitive and controversial made it clear that these elites did not want people to know the dark realities. But Gibson fought tooth and nail and didn't just win 6 Grammys, but successfully revealed how hypocritical this industry really is. The worst part is that this goes hand in hand with the double standards that Hollywood has. If you don't follow their rules, you get canceled, but if you do, you're glorified.
For some reason, the entire media is smearing this movie as a dangerous conspiracy theory. The press is saying that the star, Jim Caviezel, is a QAnon guy.
So basically, the movie is actually based on a true story about Tim Ballard, an old special agent with the Department of Homeland Security. This guy's life mission is to fight against some of the most horrific crimes involving kids and child trafficking. Eventually, he takes things into his own hands by starting his own organization called Operation Underground Railroad with some backing from Glenn Beck. In a sense, the movie is more than simply a film. It's a call to action, an attempt to raise awareness of these problems, and maybe, just maybe, contribute to a permanent ending of this type of exploitation.
The social contract. You can't get mad. You can't get mad. You can't let it get you, because you have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken that you are going to be over at some point.
But we can tell that even Mel knew since way back in the 80s that these people are not to be trusted. That even if you make content that is good and might lead the world to a better place, these Hollywood elites will always choose their own well-being and protect their own image and interests. And that's a very selfish thing to do. On top of that, despite how important this topic is, streaming sites like Netflix and Amazon just straight up ignored Sound of Freedom. It's surprising, isn't it? Because these guys are usually all about supporting causes like this. So why did they give this movie the cold shoulder? And to make things even more suspicious, all the big Hollywood names who are normally super loud about these kinds of issues have been strangely quiet. No social media posts, no interviews, nothing. Feels like everyone is just trying super hard to ignore something that's happening right under their noses. Weird, right? Also, when Mel started working on the film, it was under Disney, but suddenly Disney just dropped the project. People were totally confused, like why would they just scrap it? It's especially strange because the movie has a big name cast, yet it's not getting any promotion at all. What's crazy is that Mel Gibson actually hinted at this kind of shady industry behavior way back in 1998, and now fans are piecing things together. He's talked about feeling uneasy around certain people in Hollywood, to the point where it got pretty scary for him.
With a lot of this stuff, not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time, and you think, now this is what I mean by actually starting to swim up or downstream with the rest of the salmon, you know, eventually, if you stay here long enough.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself doing that. And you have to.
After watching this interview, many people immediately caught on to what he was saying. Without context, what he said can seem like a lot of gibberish, but pair this interview with his movie Speech of Freedom, and all of a sudden, things start to make a lot of sense. It's almost unbelievable how people have spent so much time in Hollywood and have succumbed to the act of child trafficking. But what's worse is that being part of the Hollywood elites means partaking in the worst forms of torture. Then there's this whole thing about two types of elites. One of them being a group called the Good Club, which The Guardian wrote about, and we've got some pretty big names like Bill Gates, George Soros, Ted Turner, and Oprah Winfrey. Pretty wild, right? Now that Oprah's name has come up, let's talk about her weird connections. She's always been seen as this iconic billionaire and philanthropist, but there's a side to her that will shock you. You know, Mel, being the sly guy he is, didn't directly name Oprah in Sound of Freedom, but her connection to Harvey Weinstein is very hard to ignore. It's no secret that Harvey never had a good reputation, especially when it came to how he treated young kids. Pedo alert. But despite all the horrible stuff about him, Oprah stayed really good friends with him. Miss Girls really gotta pick her friends wisely. Anyway, that's a huge red flag right there. There are even reports that Oprah encouraged other actors to work with Harvey, which makes people wonder if she was somehow involved in his shady behavior. It's like, how can she claim to support good causes while being so close to someone with such a terrible track record?
Bear with me, people, because this is as woo-woo as
It
I
is
know
woo-woo.
how I know how this sounds.
It
This
is
sounds
woo-woo,
like
yeah.
woo. It sounds crazy.
So anyway, Raina.
It's pretty wild to think that Oprah helped launch John of God into the spotlight by featuring him on her show while she talked to one of her guests. She basically handed him a huge audience and credibility, even though he turned out to be the exact opposite of what people thought. Later, she tried to save face by supporting the women who were his victims, but by then the damage was already done. It's tough to trust her now, knowing she was the one who first backed a predator posing as a faith leader. And just like Oprah, the people at the top are doing everything they can to keep the truth from getting out. They're making sure that movies like Sound of Freedom don't get the attention they deserve, quietly shutting them down before too many people start paying attention.